Last Alliance. The Divided Region, Book 3 by D.J.J. Watson. Chapter 1. Dillian paced back and forth in the castle courtyard, the promise of spring doing little to soothe his nerves. It was a particularly long and cruel winter, one of the coldest Vlencia had recorded in years, with Istril taking the brunt of the eternal ocean's icy winds. Dillian glanced at the ever-clearing sky, searching its blue expanse for some divine telling. The king was dying. While he foresaw his father's decline months ago, and was in many ways thankful for it, even he was taken aback by the speed of the monarch's decline. It seemed the old man could depart any week now, which brought a great strain to Dillian's master plan. The Earls of Claude and Blime were still no closer to recognizing his kingship, not without proof of Darius's demise. Westrun was the only city willing to support him, in no small part to his generous donations. The others weren't so easily persuaded. All he needed was one more Earl on side. Just one. If Dillian failed to achieve this by the time the sun set on his father, Alistair would assume the role of interim king. That could not happen. Dillian stopped at the castle gate, a troubled frown marring his brow. The doors groaned open, and the sharp edges of a hoof poked through the opening. The familiar sight of Reuben settled his nerves as he trotted into the courtyard. Dillian's closest confidant was right to be wary. Intrusive listeners were all around, especially here, in the capital. Reuben slung his leg over the saddle and slid off the horse in one smooth motion. Most noteworthy was his flat, featureless face. It neither promised good news nor bad. "You're late," Dillian said. "Forgive me. The journey wasn't without its obstacles." "What type of obstacles?" "I'm afraid a certain pain in our backsides wanted a brief chat." A fire lit in Dillian's chest. Alistair always had a knack for hindering things. What did the old fart have to say this time? He simply made the comment that he sees too much of me these days. He wished to know where I was headed and why. I convinced him I was merely trading some wares with an associate of mine. Still don't think he believed me. "I fear he is growing more suspicious of our partnership by the day," Dillian said. "As do I. We'll have to revert to meeting covertly. Perhaps the castle cellar could be a base of operations." Dillian mulled over the idea. "Anyway, do you bring any news?" "I have a development regarding the bones." "Go on." "There's this relative in Westrun." "Of course they reside in that armpit of a city," Dillian quipped. "Your people would sell their own children for coin." "I'm not sure you're a shining example of morality, Lord," Reuben countered with a wry smile. "They will hand over the remains, but they want more than what we're offering. Lots more." Dillian arched his neck. "How much exactly?" 3 bags of silver, and another of gold." "I will not succumb to such demands of lowly people." Reuben shook his head. "I implore you to rethink your stance. The bones belong to a man of 20 years and of similar height to Darius. Better yet, he was laid to rest 11 summers ago." Dillian leaned in, excitement stirring like a hive of bees. "The others were buried too soon or late after his exile. This is as close to a replica as we're going to find in the time we have." "How certain are you the parents will surrender this young man's remains?" "It's the sister, actually." "What of the whereabouts of the mother and father?" "No idea," Reuben replied. "And you didn't think to ask?" "It is of little significance. Gold is what matters. For the right price, I'm sure she will allow us to exhume the body." Dillian sighed, running a hand through his hair. The decision was a simple one. He needed to pay. But that didn't make it any easier to agree to. He stared off at the wispy clouds forming high above. The sun shone through them and onto the capital, covering everything in a yellow haze. Seagulls rode the wind, squawking as they dipped beneath the castle walls to catch whatever the crashing waves offered below. Soon summer would arrive and bring with it all the usual festivities. Tradesmen and farmers from all over the kingdom would descend on Istril to flog their wares and harvest. While spring was his favorite, the coming season was his father's preferred time of the year. It was sad to think he may not see another one, for even his stubborn ways were no match for poor health. It stacked greater urgency on Dillian's shoulders. He feared his hair would grey before he inherited the crown, if he did. The goal was anything but straightforward. He must prove to the earls that Darius was dead, and that he was the legitimate heir to the throne. If news of his brother's prison escape reached them, everything he had worked tirelessly towards would go up in flames. "What is it?" Reuben spotted the worry on his face. "Offer the young woman an additional bag of silver. If she refuses it, kill her." Dillian's voice was cold and even, betraying no emotion. "We have little time to waste, and I cannot afford for some peasant girl to jeopardize everything." "Very well, but before I go—" Reuben gazed down at the cobbled stone. "I've received word of Darius and those pagan fiends of his." Dillian's pulse skipped a beat. "Don't tell me what I fear you're going to say." "They're still alive. I'm sorry." "It cannot be. Hellhands chased them to the Elronian border. That was the last I heard." Dillian exhaled deeply, trying to contain the nausea that ran rampant within. His eyes suddenly flared with disdain. "You said they would get caught or killed." "I believe they will. They are just proving elusive." Dillian sneered. "You better hope they travel to the northern border." Reuben couldn't look him in the eye. "No," Dillian shook his head. "Do not say it. They fled into the forbidden forest." Dillian's blood ran colder than a sheet of ice. The forest was all that separated his brother from Vlencia. It was too close for comfort, dangerously so. "It's only a matter of time before they turn up dead or captured," Reuben said, though his words lacked conviction. "I want to know where they are, now. With all due respect—" "Respect?" Dillian leaned into Reuben. "I'll kill you where you stand if you fail me." "It takes weeks for updates to reach me this side of the border." "So what?" Dillian hissed. "For all we know, Darius and his cohort could walk among us right at this very moment." "You worry yourself too much, Lord. And you haven't got the foggiest clue what mess this could bring." Dillian tempered his tone. "Barely. I want to know what they are doing, and where they're doing it. I do not care if it's that they eat oats for breakfast and shit twice in the afternoon. Report everything. Do you understand me, Reuben?" Reuben nodded. "Good." Dillian stepped back, heaving a sigh. "Do not disappoint me again. He'll not survive the forest a second time, I assure you. This is Darius you're talking about." "Yes, but he is no god." Dillian took solace in Reuben's words. Not that he believed them, but they made him feel better. "Once the matter of bones is resolved, I will send men to the forest's border on the chance Darius emerges." "No, I need them there now. We cannot risk his return to Vlencia. Why else would he choose to go through such a trial again?" "Fine, but it'll cost." "I don't bloody care, just get it done." "As you wish. Men will be there within the day." Reuben climbed onto his steed. Before riding off, he said, "I'm expecting an update in the coming days. When I receive it, I shall find you." "You will." Dillian's words had a certain edge to them. "Fetch those bones, Reuben." Reuben half bowed his head. "Lord." With that, he steered his horse around and rode out of the gates. Dillian watched as he shrunk downhill and towards the whitewashed buildings. Placing his hands on his hips, he gazed up at the sky, which no longer proffered the peace it did earlier. Perhaps Reuben was right, and Darius would perish in the forbidden forest. But what if he didn't? Such a possibility sent shivers down Dillian's spine. The void would sooner ice over before he ever allowed Darius to inhale Vlencian air. He had to be stopped, and stopped he will be. Chapter 2. They dismounted their horses and walked between the tall, straight trees. Darius crouched low to the forest floor and gently pulled back the branches to peer into the meadow. Morning dew clung to the grass like a newborn to its mother. Outside of the occasional flock of birds, the field was soulless, barren. The mood was one of great curiosity and uncertainty. The trials of Elrond and the Forbidden Forest brought them to this moment, home. But instead of feeling a sense of victory, only hollowness found Darius. "So this is the Southern Kingdom," Alir murmured, his voice filled with a sense of wonder. "Aye," Django replied. "It's strange to be in the enemy's territory." Darius had no words. Each breath snagged on his windpipe as he relived the surreal experience of that fateful night 10 summers ago. Every imaginable emotion hit him like an unruly wave that had been building for thousands of miles. It seemed no matter where he looked, all he saw was his exile play out before him. His eyes found the very spot where he and Alistair stood as his mentor handed down his punishment. He may have been 23 at the time, but to Darius, he was a boy still trying to find his way in the world. "Everything is greener?" Django interrupted Alir. "Yes, and the air, it's cleaner?" "All right, you can stop that now," Alir sighed. "Suit yourself, arse. How are you faring, brother?" Darius didn't know how to answer Alir's question. Old feelings and new ones alike rose to the surface like boiled scum. Once the somberness passed, his mind turned to the magnitude of the task ahead and the repercussions if they failed. He stood and approached the Gali men. With a grateful smile, he thanked the guardsmen for bringing them to their destination unscathed, clasping his hands around his chest in a show of gratitude. Darius made sure they passed on his best wishes to Elysia before bidding them farewell. As they rode away through the trees, it warmed him to know the tribe was liberated. He could only hope that they continued to prosper. He turned to face his men as an antsy sensation reverberated across him. He didn't know if it was the adrenaline of the moment or maybe the thrill of being in dangerous territory, but he suddenly felt alive. The world beyond the tree line wasn't his friend, nor his enemy. It was both. "I guess we're on our own now," said Helmund. He mooched in his satchel and complained about the lack of rations. "We will need to find food and water soon." He was right. They needed to stock up on resources. Kladstin was many days away, and Darius didn't enjoy the prospect of wild camping on their way there. "Mount your horses," he ordered. Darius could tell by the steeds' flaring nostrils and the way they inhaled the meadow's scents that they yearned to run across it. It was possibly their first foray into open pasture. "Where are we heading?" Alir asked. "Klad," Darius said. "But isn't Blime closer?" "It is, but it's also a fishbowl of a town. Everybody knows everyone there. It wouldn't take much time for rumors to start circulating about us, so it's best we don't stay there too long." Helmund frowned. "What makes Klad any better?" "It is a bustling trading port. People of all creeds and tongues frequent the city. Few will suspect anything. We might even find work there." "Work?" Django snorted, the shade from the trees doing little to disguise his disfigured eye. "I've not gone through all this to brown-nose a master." "How do you expect us to sleep and eat without gold or silver?" Darius countered. "Live off the land is what I say. Aren't you tired of sleeping on grass and bugs? Not as much as being at the behest of a Vlencian. Yet you allow me to lead." Django fell silent, his cheeks turning a shade of red. "A couple of honest days' work will do you some good," Alir teased. "Fine, whatever," Django spat. "Are we going or what?" They all chuckled. "I swear, if I get one jib about being Elronian, I'm killing 'em." "The people of Klad are used to diverse characters," Darius replied, "though you might be an exception." He led them out of the tree line onto the vast pasture. They studied their surroundings for danger near and far, but didn't see any, thankfully. There was only deafening quietness and an endless patch of grass stretching before them. It was as if the air had been sucked from the meadow, but Darius couldn't quite shake the 1,000 invisible eyes that watched them. Satisfied they were safe, for now, He steered his horse in an easterly direction, and they broke into a gentle sprint until the forest faded behind. The sun was warm on his cheeks, and the grass tickled his shins. In that fleeting instant, he was free. Free of his troubles, burdens, and the hurdles he was inevitably going to face. He clung onto this sensation with all that he had, knowing full well it wouldn't last. The ills of the world were always right around the corner, ready to crush him with their cruel embrace. His fight was just beginning.
D.J.J. Watson here, and I know what you're thinking. What the hell happened to that smooth, suave British accent I was just listening to? Fret not, you're about to get back with him and the story in a jiffy. This is just a friendly reminder to let you know that you can buy the ad-free versions of these audiobooks over at my storehouse, which is just a fancy way of saying my own website. The link is in the description. So, yeah, back to the story.
Chapter 3. The city glowed orange as lanterns burned throughout the night. The sky was a deep shade of blue and adorned with a plethora of glowing pearls. It was easy to believe in gods when under the spell of stars and a seemingly infinite realm. Darius halted his cohort some way from the open gates of Klad, where a pair of soldiers in steel attire flanked the threshold, each holding a lit torch. He looked to the skyline, but couldn't see the gliding silhouettes of the birds that gave this city its apt name, Gull's Nest. For centuries, seagulls have called Klad home. Being the largest trading port in all of Vlencia, it promised easy pickings for the creatures. All manners of things voyaged across the choppy waters of the windswept sea. Shipments of grains, fruits, and meats came here too, as well as some of the finest seafood from Greater Estrana. Not that Vlencia lacked its own resources to trade. While dawn wasn't far away, this by no means implied the city was asleep. Men and women dotted the streets beyond the walls, selling their wares to passers-by. Distant sawing and the banging of hammers also filled the air, which carried a smouldering scent. "This place looks and tastes like a dump." Janga blew through his nostrils. "But it may prove to be our salvation." Darius didn't even regard him with a glance. Alir and Helmond were mute. The road until now had been devoid of travellers or patrolling guards, which surprised Darius. His paranoia did not let up, however, and no matter how clear the path was, he couldn't shake the hunch that it was all some elaborate trap. "Come on!" He tugged the reins of his horse. "The longer we stay out here, the more attention we'll attract." Both sentries raised their torches to illuminate Darius and his men as they approached. "Halt!" the one on the right called out, his accent an unnerving reminder of being home. "What's your purpose?" Darius's heart felt as if it was going to explode in his chest. So much anxiety and dread descended upon him. He somehow kept his tone calm. "We've travelled a great distance from Blime and seek refuge for the weekend." The sentry frowned. "Do you have business in Klad, then? State your trade." Darius ran his tongue over his lips. No, nothing of the kind. We are travellers, simple tradesmen. We just want somewhere to lodge and offer our hands to locals that may need them." The guard looked at the other with a blank stare. "You've arrived at a good time. A lot of exports are heading out this weekend. I suppose there's no point in letting honest coin go to waste. Stay out of trouble." Darius nodded, and the guards stepped aside to let them pass through the arched gates. The doors were made of solid oak, nailed with thick iron beams. A brass crest of a gull perched over the lintel, wings spread wide, and head held high. They spent the next hour trotting through the streets, dominated by stalls and thatched roof buildings. The smouldering scent, mixed with the smells of fish, mead, and sweat, created a pungent aroma that would take some getting used to. It really was a workers' city. "Over there," Alir pointed to a distant port. "That has to be the harbour." Ships of all shapes, sizes, and sails docked and departed. Men were busy taking on and offloading goods, while others loaded crates onto horse carts. The quay was a hive of activity, even at this ungodly hour. Janga and Helmond were already discussing their plans for the day ahead. They planned on drinking, and then drinking some more. "I think not," Darius said. "What gold or silver we earn will be spent on lodging and hearty food, and those alone." Jenga frowned. "Are you having a laugh? My mouth hasn't tasted a tankard of mead in months." "Good thing, too," Allaire added, sitting on his spotted steed. "Drunken lips sink ships. We cannot afford to attract any unwanted attention." "I'll sink your ship in a second, boy." "I'm sure one won't hurt," Hellman said. "Water doesn't carry the same effect as a brewed pint. If there's enough coin left by the time we're done here, we'll go for just the one." "No more," Darius said, leading them to the harbor. Janga's face turned dark. "That's like telling a starving man to only eat a single slice of bread." "One's better than none," Allaire said. "Personally, I'd take hard cider at this point." Janga glared at him. "How dare you insult mead?" "Agreed," Hellman snorted. "Cider is a disgrace of a drink." Darius sighed. "Let's worry about finding a place for the night. You'll get your fill in good time." "I think there are taverns this way," Janga pointed. "Go on, don't let me stop your nose from leading us," Darius quipped. It took another half hour to find an inn that wasn't packed with patrons. The stables were in the backyard, where a large man, wreathed in dark hair, greeted them. Hellman handed him what silver he had left on his person. "Keep an eye on these horses. Feed them and make sure they get a good rest. We'll come back for them when the weekend is over." The stableman nodded and took the reins. "I'll treat 'em well, sir. Don't you worry." They entered the tavern and were greeted by a burly man behind the bar. His arms rivaled Janga's, and his bald head reflected the glow of candles. There weren't many punters around, but just enough to give it a sleepy atmosphere. "Welcome." The innkeeper was busy drying a cup with a discolored cloth. "If you are looking for cheap lodging, I'm afraid you're out of luck." "How much are your rooms going for?" Darius asked. 4 silver a night." "What?" Janga exclaimed, but the landlord seemed unfazed. "We shelled out less for our horses to be looked after this weekend." "Not my problem. You can always try another tavern, but the last I heard, they were all booked out." "You're joking me." "Elronians," the innkeeper mumbled, shaking his head before drying more cups. "What did you just say?" "If you aren't happy with the prices, piss off. There are plenty of stables that will take you." Janga rushed forward, but Allaire and Hellman stepped between them. "Is there not any way we might strike some sort of deal?" Darius asked the man. "There are 4 sets of capable hands here. Surely there's some work you can have us do." "Nothing here, I'm afraid." He glared at Janga before nodding to a punter at the back. "That chap might be able to help you, though." Darius turned around to see a lone shadow sitting quietly in the corner. He had a short beard and wore the look of someone who knew a thing or 3 about the city. "He doesn't talk much, mind," the innkeeper said, "but he often hires travelers." "What does he do?" Hellman asked. "He's a merchant, a Claudian through and through. Go speak with him. His name is Jux." Darius nodded for Allaire to go with him, while telling Hellman to keep watch over Janga's temper at the bar. As they approached the stranger, he glanced up and swirled what contents remained in his tankard. "Can I help you?" His voice was rough, but not unkind. "Perhaps," Darius replied. "Do you mind if we sit?" "Go ahead." He encouraged Darius and Allaire to pull out a seat. Allaire's pale skin caught the man's eye. He leaned forward, squinting. "You from the north?" "I am," Allaire said. "What part of Elrond?" "Tuga." "Why?" "I've traded there many times over the years. Illegally, of course. Not the easiest of people to barter with, nor is it a fun place to get shipments to and from, but the steel they forged was well worth the headache. Made me quite the profit too, before it became one big barrack." Jux sighed. Allaire cocked a brow. "I thought you didn't talk much. Is that what Gyrick said about me?" A wry smile passed the merchant's lips as he glanced over their shoulders at the man at the bar. "Anyway, what matter is so great for you to disturb a fellow and his drink?" "The keeper suggested you might have some work going," Darius said. Jux took in a long breath. I've been burnt by enough half-wits lately. I assure you we are not here to swindle you. We're in Klad only for the weekend." "For what exactly?" "To earn some coin for our travels." "Where are you off to next?" Alia interjected. "With utmost respect, that is none of your concern." Jux chuckled. "You're right. Forgive me." He stared long and hard at the two of them before roaming to Janga and Helmond in the background. Grey shoots shone in the candlelight among his short, dark hair. He wasn't old by any means, but it was evident the man had to scrape for everything he earned in life. "I suppose I could use your men's hands? I've got plenty of shipments due out over the coming days." Alia's face lit up. "But you don't look like people who move crates full of swords and shields for a living." "Coin is coin," Darius said. "We'll take whatever is going. How much are you willing to pay?" 2 silver per person, per day." Alia's brows furrowed. Jux leaned into his creaking chair. "That's the rate. Grasp it or pass it." "We shall offer our services somewhere else then." Darius went to stand up when the man introduced an alternative. "There is one other option. Unless we are compensated in gold or respectable silver, I am not interested." "Oh, this will. How much exactly depends on you?" Darius glanced at Alia and settled back into his seat. "I'm listening." Jux took a swig from his tankard before setting it on the withered oak table. 2 days ago, bandits stole a cart full of my client's shipments. It would have fetched us both a considerable amount of gold. Rumor has it that the bastards are coming back to Klad tomorrow to ship it off as if it were their own. In different crates, of course. "And what makes you think we can help you with that?" "Lad, I've been on this rock long enough to know who is who. You don't have the look of men who move heavy boxes." Alia was careful in what he gave away, but it was clear he was keen on the proposition. "So, you'd like us to get your shipment back?" "Ideally. But it's more important that you send those bastards a firm message not to steal from me again. And if we cannot return the plunder, I'll still pay you for your efforts." Darius sat up straight while processing the offer. The man wanted to hire muscle. In any normal situation, it would have been an easy enough decision, but they were in Vlencia. There, Crimson Guards could be stationed in Klad for all he knew. It only took one person to recognize his face, and that could spell the end of their journey before it had even begun. The sole purpose of stopping there was to restock and replenish themselves for the long road to Kladstin. But the allure of coin was strong. "How much are we talking then?" Darius asked. "Only serious amounts this time," Alia warned. Jux flickered between the pair of them, his mouth slightly agape. 2 bags of silver if you find and beat the fools. 5 gold each if you can return the shipment." "Each?" Jux hummed. Darius looked at Alia, who tamely nodded his approval. "Do this, and I will also see that your lodging is taken care of," Jux added. "Brother," Alia leaned in to whisper, "this is as good an offer as we are going to receive." "Do we have a deal?" Darius extended a hand. "We do." Jux shook it and said, "That's settled then. However, there is a small matter we must address." "What's that?" "To ensure you don't run off after I've paid for your stay, I will need to hold on to your sword until the job is done." "With all due respect," Alia assured, "we are not the type to bolt." "I trust no one in this transient city," Jux said sternly. "Maybe after our little assignment, I might take your word. Until then, I've got to be sure you won't stiff me. Now, if you would so kindly surrender it." Darius sighed before begrudgingly unbuckling his sword and handing it over. "Fail to return it, and I'll kill you." "I knew you were right for this task." Jux smiled. "Yet you haven't asked for our names." "I care little for such details." Darius interlocked his hands. "Where can we locate these bandits?" "Go to the Red Cauldron Inn and ask for Maria. You won't miss her common tongue. See that she gives you the information about these bastards. Although, I will warn you, many of the ships set sail mid-afternoon. If you want the full reward, I suggest you find them before the first ship leaves the docks. Jux rose to his feet. Now, get some rest while I speak with the innkeeper. You've all got an important morning ahead of you. Chapter 4. I cannot believe you gave up your sword so easily, Janga said, as they strolled back to the harbour. It was late morning, and seagulls cawed high above. The cobbled dock was littered with white and green splatter, and people rushing to load and unload carts. Darius rolled his eyes. It was that or break our backs for pennies. The choice was simpler than you think. They waded through the mania and made it to a quieter district. There were so many inns, but none of them bore the name Red Cauldron. That was until Darius turned into a side street. There, a tired-looking sign flapped in the wind, high above an equally depressing door. The alleyway was dark, wet, and dingy. For a moment, he believed his sight had misled him, but the washed-out sigil of a steaming pot suggested otherwise. A hefty woman sat on a barrel near the entrance. Not 5 seconds passed before she looked them up and down with suspicious eyes. "What do you fellas want?" she said. She was short, red-faced, and had an attitude longer than her auburn ponytail. That spoke nothing of the army of freckles clustered around her nose like a constellation, which might have had a hand in her boisterous nature. Darius imagined she was the subject of many cruel jokes as a child. "We're here to speak with Maria," he said. "Who's asking?" "Does it matter?" Helmund added. "Oi, treat the lass with some courtesy." Janga's smile tugged against his beard. For a moment, Darius could have sworn the woman blushed. "Since when have you been a man of manners?" Alir quipped. Janga craned his frame around in a display of superiority. "After I slept with your mother." Helmund chuckled, but Darius found little time to indulge in such silly humour. He was there to speak with Maria and nothing more. "Look, do you know of her or not? Jux sent us." "I didn't think he recruited muscle." Her voice lacked proper education. She studied the 4 of them, particularly Janga. "Is this about that bloody shipment of his?" "So, you are Maria," Darius said. "He told me you have information about the bandits who stole from him." She sighed and slumped on the barrel. "Their names are Wall and Shum. They're brothers who operate outside Klad, bandits in every aspect of the word. Jux said they are due in the city today. What do they look like?" "Scraggly, short-looking stumps. Can't think of any other ways to describe 'em." Helmund shook his head. "Great. So like everyone else, then." "Yeah. I don't know why Jux got you lot involved. You have your work cut out, I tell ya." "You must know more." Darius grew restless. "He wouldn't have sent us here otherwise." "Maybe I do. Maybe I don't," she said. "Like a whore, I don't pleasure for free." "Damn right," Janga growled like a crazed animal. "Knock it off," Darius exclaimed, before returning his gaze to Maria. "Take that up with Jux. I'm sure he'll see that you're paid for your part. Now, I will not ask again. What else can you tell us about them? We haven't got long before ships leave the port." "Fine." Maria shifted uncomfortably. "They ride 2 spotted horses. Both are black and white. I imagine they'll need a carriage today. For what it's worth, Shum has a toad's skin, bumpy and horrible. He must have had bad acne as a kid. Wall has lighter hair and a crooked nose, no doubt from a pub brawl. He always gets into trouble. Mind, he's not the strongest of blokes." She paused before continuing. "Not sure how reliable this is, but I hear they will be using the Mercer's shipping company." "Mercer?" She nodded. "How do you know all of this?" Helmund asked. "Keep your sniffer out of my bra. That's as much as you're getting out of me. Tell Jux he owes me." She gave Janga a wry smile and stormed inside the inn without saying goodbye. Janga turned to Darius with disgust. "Do you always have to act like a rude tit?" "If it gets results, I don't care. Now come on, we've got bandits to catch." Darius led them out of the dreary alleyway and into the bubblier half of the district. It took them the best part of 20 minutes to return to the harbour. Longships lined the dock like a row of wooden giants, their sails washed out from countless voyages. Shadows from crates that waited to be loaded ran across the deck and into the sea, while gulls collected high above in the pristine sky. A ghost of a smile passed his lips. So much of him believed he would never taste Vlencian air again, nor bathe under its spring sun. Yet here he was. He eyed a few groups of men loading and unloading crates. Their movements were slow and strained, but they were effective. This was going to be a lot harder than he expected. Failure to find the bandits would result in no payment at all. With only a day left of their stay, they couldn't afford such misfortunes. "We should split up. It will increase our chances of success," Hellman suggested, as he dodged a man carrying a hefty box. "You really are an idiot," Janga groaned. "Cease your bickering," Darius intervened. "No, we stick together. If you must, stand a few meters apart." Alir and Hellman agreed. He and Janga separated from Darius and Alir, blending into the crowd enough not to draw attention, but remaining close to spot anyone noteworthy. The next few minutes passed without incident. The longer Darius stood there, the more faith bled from him. He started thinking of other ways to make coin until the sound of wheels rumbled in the distance. He turned in time to see a small wagon with 2 spotted horses trotting along the cobbled harbour. He squinted, trying to get a better glimpse at the figures riding it, which was near impossible as workers flew in and out of view. Janga and Hellman also noticed the carriage and nodded to Alir. Soon they all converged and waded through the stream of grunting labourers. It wasn't long before they caught up with the slow-moving vehicle. Calls for others to get out of the way filled the air. It came from the 2 riders. Darius studied them as they passed. They were indeed short and scraggly-looking. They wore sleek and smooth leather coats that cascaded to their feet. He noticed one had bumpy skin, like Maria mentioned. Darius exchanged a glance with his companions. He knew they were thinking the same thing. This must be them, for they had the look and feel of bandits. The carriage stopped abruptly ahead of a pile of crates that were destined for the large shipping vessel. The name Mercer was engraved on its bow, catching Darius off guard. This couldn't marry up more if he tried. He glanced around. It was too public to make an example of the thieves. They would draw too much attention. There had to be another way. "Excuse me, gentlemen." Hellman stepped out in front of them. "You cannot stop here unless you have shipments for the Mercer." "Genius," Darius thought. "Good job we do then, Sunshine," the man with the lumpy skin said. "Shum." "Splendid," Hellman said. "My men here will help you unload." The bandits studied Darius, Alir, and Janga with a great deal of hesitation. "Get lost," Shum jutted his chin out. "We'll offload them ourselves." Unlike the other carriages, a cream tarp encased this one's skeletal structure and contents. It was clear a sudden turn in weather wasn't the only motivating factor for this. Darius ignored Shum's order and discreetly nodded at Alir and Janga to follow him. He went to the rear of the carriage, peeled open the flap, and hopped aboard. It was blisteringly hot inside. Both bandits leapt from the driver's seat to confront them, but Darius disregarded their calls and began moving the crates, while Janga and Alir remained outside with the brothers. "Do you want a smack or what?" Wall warned, his face twisted in rage. "We're just helping you unload," Darius called out. "I'll give you fucking help." The fairer-haired bandit climbed onto the wagon, giving in to the ruse. As soon as Darius unsheathed his blade, Alir shut the flap to shield their scheme from prying eyes. Alir, Janga, and Hellman swiftly surrounded the other thief. All Darius could see were their silhouettes towering over Shum's small stature. While cramped, that didn't prevent Wall from taking a swing. Darius ducked and pressed his dagger against the bandit's throat. Wall's eyes, wild with fear, flickered with a sudden spark of defiance. Despite the cold steel pressed against his throat, he sneered, his voice a mix of threat and desperation. "You're in over your head, pal. These crates, you lay a finger on them, and you'll have more than just us to worry about." Darius tightened his grip on the dagger, feeling the bandit's pulse quicken under the blade. A faint and fleeting whimper escaped Wall's cracked lips. "Where did you get these crates?" Darius gritted his teeth. "They are ours." Darius pressed the blade deeper into his flesh. "Spew one more lie, and I will drench this carriage in your blood." Wall's face contorted, a mix of fear and hesitation, etching deep lines around his brows. He glanced down at the blade, its edge glinting ominously close to his skin, then back at Darius's unwavering gaze. The air in the carriage was thick and charged with tension. For a moment he seemed to weigh his options, the struggle evident in his shifting eyes and the nervous twitch of his jaw. With a ragged breath that spoke of defeat, Wall's resistance crumbled. All right, he rasped, his voice laced with a begrudging acceptance of his predicament. "We nabbed them." "From who?" "I can't remember. Some exporter here in Klad." "Why does it matter?" "His name is Jux, and you and your brother have upset him very much." "How do you know such things?" "You stole from the wrong man, that's why. Jux has eyes and ears in every corner of this city. If there is so much as one sword missing in these crates, I will hunt you down and feed you to pigs piece by piece. You hear me?" Darius scrunched Wall's collar. "Yes," he whimpered. "We'll never steal from him again. Please, I swear it. Just let me go." Darius released him. "The carriage and horses are ours." "Not the mare's, please." "Another word and I'll spill your guts out." Wall grimaced. "Fine!" As he was about to peel the flap open, Darius booted him in the back and sent the stocky man falling out of the wagon. It was a harsh landing, but the bandit brothers were quick to scurry away. "He looks like he saw one of those steel spirit things," Janga said. "You didn't show him your shrunken manhood, did you?" Helmand and Alia chuckled. "No, I told him you liked your men short and fat. That scared him enough." Janga's face turned blue with embarrassment. "I cannot believe how easy that was," Alia added. "There wasn't a fighting bone in their bodies. Some of the easiest gold we will earn. Savor it." Darius looked at Helmand. "Well played, by the way." "I learned from my brother. Gods rest his soul." Darius scanned the ever-filling harbor for any signs of others watching. Nothing. The sun hung high in the sky, marking the turn into the afternoon. "The three of you keep watch here while I find Jux," he said. "We don't want his precious cargo lost a second time. Besides, my waist feels light without my sword." "Very well, brother," Alia replied. "We'll be waiting," Helmand said. Darius hopped off the carriage and joined the steady flow of people. It took the best part of an hour to reach the district where the tavern was. Fresh smells of spicy stew filtered through the air. His nose located it to a stall where a small line of townsfolk gathered. Among them were two armed men holding their helmets. They wore the same steel armor and red cape that flapped in the gentle breeze. Their chest plates bore dark lines and an emblazoned shield and sword sigil. These weren't typical guards. They were knights belonging only to the most famous legion, the Crimson Guard. Darius's heart sank when he recognized one of them. The man's blonde hair and square face were unmistakably Berg's. He froze to the spot, ignoring the disgruntled looks of passers-by. His mind and legs struggled to corroborate, to move. Berg had grown into a formidable-looking warrior since their rivalry in the apprenticeship. He stood tall and broad, his muscles bulging under his impenetrable attire. It was difficult to believe they were the same age. Harder still that they were once sworn enemies. After their graduation, Darius hoped they could have settled their differences, but like every other aspiration he had back then, that too was lost on the night of his exile. As if Berg sensed someone was watching him, he turned around and locked eyes with Darius, his pupils bulging. Darius did the only logical thing he could do at that moment: run. Chapter 5. Darius spun around and shoved passers-by out of the way. "You!" Berg called. "Stop!" Darius ignored his commands and rounded a corner where even more people gathered. Crowds converged with one another to form a mass of disheveled, sweaty bodies. He glanced over his shoulder, Berg and his comrade hot on his heels. He wove through the throngs, ducking past several stalls and narrowly missing a horse and cart that carried wine barrels. 2 women gasped and dropped their baskets, sending apples sprawling onto the cobble. "Scumbag!" one cried. The crowd thinned, and his pursuers lost sight of him. Darius took a sharp right and darted into an alleyway littered with empty grain sacks and spoiled food. He didn't make it to the end before he heard that distinct voice. "Stop!" Berg yelled. Darius glanced back, but could only see Berg's tall figure. The other knight was nowhere to be seen. Was he circling around to cut him off? Panting, he pressed on, taking one turn after another. He forced his breath in and out, straining his lungs. The muscles in his legs burned like liquid fire. He turned left and then right, zigzagging his way through the web of alleyways. The deeper he traveled in the labyrinth, the louder the chasing footsteps became. He couldn't tell if it was 1 or 2 people chasing him. When he rounded a corner, he encountered an imposing wall that barred his escape. "No," he gasped. He spun on his heels, only to face a breathless Berg blocking his way. With his sword drawn, he arched his neck forward in disbelief. It was like he was staring at a ghost. In a way, he was. "Princey," he panted. "Berg," Darius fought to catch his breath. "You're supposed to be dead." "I've been close to it many times, believe me." He lowered his weapon. "What are you doing here, Darius? You are exiled. You were warned of the consequences." "It's a long story." "You committed treason." "I did not," he rebuked. "The only person who committed such treachery was my brother." "Dillian?" Berg's fair brows came together. "He's not who he makes himself out to be. That's all I will say," Darius said. A pregnant pause fell over them. "You look well. I see the armor doesn't carry the same weight it once did. My heart seeks to be a captain." "Is that so?" Regret tore through Darius. Just seeing Berg brought back so many dreams and aspirations. It was as if he was the visual manifestation of what Darius could have been. "We had quite the rivalry back then, didn't we?" "That we did. I was young and angry. Still am in some ways." Darius smiled. "I don't suppose the old guard is still cracking his whip?" "Alistair is Alistair, only older." "Sounds about right. And what of my father? I heard he is unwell." A regretful expression enveloped Berg. "How long have you been in Vlencia, Darius?" "Less than a week. Why? Is he dead?" "You cannot be here." "Answer me, Berg." The knight's lips formed a grim line. "Not yet." Relief and urgency washed through Darius in equal doses. "Your tone hints he is all but at the void's door." "The king hasn't got many dawns left. He will be lucky to make it to the end of the month." "That's not even a few weeks away." Berg lowered his sword completely. His eyes filled with pity, a look Darius hadn't seen since their graduation. "I'm sorry, Princey. There's nothing to apologize for." He rotated his frame, fighting back a wrenching sense of loss. He and Robic had a strained relationship after the death of Darius's mother. It led to countless arguments and questions over their bond as father and son. Despite his part in the exile, Darius held no ill will towards him. Not now. Not after the dream he had before the raid on Valga's treasury. There, he didn't see a king. He saw a fragile man who had paid his penance in declining health. Dillian was to blame for such treachery, nobody else. "Darius," Berg started. "I know. You've got the law to uphold and an oath to honor. I wouldn't expect you to let me just walk away." Berg gulped and glanced around the dingy alley in a moment of doubt. His resolve was wavering. "You have until sunset tomorrow to leave." "Claude?" "Vlencia," Darius recoiled. "It will take me that long to reach Istril and sound the alarm. I have no choice." This cannot go unreported. You know that as well as I do. You'd do that for me? Berg sighed. I was hard on you back in the apprenticeship, unjustly so. You made me raise my game, and if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be where I am today. Call it a debt repaid. Darius was at a loss for words. Here, his once arch-nemesis was handing him a lifeline, a head start out of this dire situation. It was as odd as it was flattering. It was amazing how time and one's environment could change a person. Thank you, was all Darius said. Berg sheathed his sword. Don't let me regret it. As he turned to leave the alley, Darius called out, Berg, there's something I must tell you. He closed his eyes as his mind rallied for him to not utter another word. Yes? I am not leaving Vlencia, not until I see that my business here is done. Berg's face scrunched together. It will hopefully all make sense in time. The knight nodded tamely, tensing his jawline. You've got until sunset tomorrow. From there, it's up to the sky gods. Godspeed, Darius.
D.J.J. Watson here, and this has been Last Alliance Part 1. As ever, if you enjoyed this story, be sure to like and subscribe, but more importantly, hit that bell icon to make sure you don't miss when Part 2 drops. All of that said, this is the third instalment in the Divided Region series, and truthfully, it's where the story starts to pick up some pace. Darius returns to Vlencia after 10 years of banishment. Obviously, his main goal is to get to Kladstin undetected ideally, but this is fantasy and this is fiction, and that doesn't really happen, or at least not in any decent story. So yeah, there's lots to look forward to, and I will refrain from divulging too much as there's still another few parts of this book to go. All of that said, what other things have happened here at Watson HQ this week? Actually, quite a few things. Long-time listeners and readers might have noticed that the thumbnails look a little bit different, and I'm not talking about the artwork, I'm talking specifically about my covers. I've commissioned new covers, nothing wrong with the old ones, they did a good job, but after a year or two they needed a little bit of a refresh, and more importantly, they needed a refresh because I'm about to embark in the world of paperbacks. After a couple of years of ignoring this format, I'm finally getting around to it, which I know there are a number of readers that will be happy to hear that. Now, for those who are unaware, the reason is quite simple. Paperbacks are quite frankly a pain in the arse to supply. Now, most authors typically will go through the Amazon route, and I probably will get there at some point, but I am a storefront first type of author, and in case you're new around here, my storefront is just a term I use to describe my own direct store where I sell my fictional wares. I do this for a myriad of reasons, but mostly to just take back control of the publishing side of my business. After one too many horror stories that I've read over the years of authors' KDP accounts randomly getting shut down, I don't really fancy putting all of my eggs in the Jeff Bezos basket. So I've been putting that off because I haven't been able to source a reliable print-on-demand service. But I'm pleased to announce that I have identified one, and I will be trialing that with a number of my customers in the coming weeks. So depending on when you listen to this, paperback versions may very well be live and ready to order, which is great for those who enjoy audiobooks but like to collect the paperbacks as a sort of trophy, if you will. I know I do that. So, and I know there are plenty of other readers out there that also do that. So yes, depending on when you listen to this, there may be paperbacks ready and waiting. In other news, I've made the recent move to sell digitally signed ebooks, again, specifically at my store. I've retired my original normal ebooks, if you can call them that, the same ones that you can get on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble and the likes. The only difference is the ebooks through my store are digitally signed and time-stamped with their publication date. Fret not, you'll not be paying any more or any less for them. They're the same price. But I just like to reward patrons that are willing to take a chance and buy direct, especially after you realise how easy it is to still enjoy these books on your Kindle, Kobo, Nook, whatever, iPad. You know, there's a lot of false information out there that has a lot of readers believing that if you do not buy on Amazon, you cannot read it on your Kindle. Well, that's far from the truth, as I demonstrate on my store. So, yes, for the hardcore fans, the ones who like to collect stuff, the digitally signed ebooks are available right now. Links are in the description for that. In other news, we have actually started chapter 1 of book 6 of the series. Yes, book 6. I'm acutely aware you're on book 3 right now, but book 6 is, well, it's officially started. But as ever, if you want to be notified when I make any big changes, or whether you want to be notified when the paperbacks are launched, I encourage you to go and join the Legion, which again is just a fancy name for my daily newsletter. But unlike all the other author newsletters out there, I'm not really in the business of emailing once a month with 100 buy now links and a really basic writer's update. I talk about everything and anything. Sometimes I will just espouse my opinion on something. Other times I will share my theory on Mars. And other times I will just troll the trolls. You know, I do enjoy roasting a disgruntled reader. So do my readers. So there's plenty to look forward to in the Legion, but I also understand it's not everyone's cup of Earl Grey. So if that's you, avoid my newsletter like the plague. But if you're keen to hear more of my ramblings, be sure to head on over there. And as a reward, you'll also get the unpublished prequel to The Divided Region, aptly named The Apprentice. You'll get it in ebook and audiobook, and it sort of provides a little bit more context to the day of Darius's exile, which it's just a nice little add-on. So be sure to head on over there to djjwatson.com, and otherwise just like, subscribe, leave a comment below. And for the love of all things notifications, be sure to hit that bell icon so you don't miss when the next part comes out. Alright guys and girls, lords and ladies, this is D.J.J. Watson, and I'll see you on the next one.